Hey, it's Low Profile. I'm Markley, and this is a sound work entitled Murk by the duo Alejandra Salinas and Aeron Bergman. Taken from a collection of re-edited works called Ficcion, it's a slice of a chapter in this couple's life together as globetrotting sound artists, which lasted for about a decade, starting in 1996. Back then, they were simply known as Alejandra and Aeron. They also ran a record label called Lucky Kitchen, which released albums by dozens of international sound artists like Asuna, Johsua Abrams, Toshiyuki Kobayashi, Pauline Oliveros, and too many more to mention here. But I absolutely love all the duo's recordings. Thankfully, most of these rare and obscure records have recently become available again through Bandcamp. Today, they're teaching art in Portland, Oregon, developing a new species of genetically enhanced attack bees, and producing multimedia works under the name Bergman and Salinas.
You got the bee again.
Put it by the microphone so everyone can hear it.
Oh,
It got me.
oh no!
Oh no!
Hit me.
Oh no!
Low Profile is listener supported, so please share it with a friend who might enjoy it. And if you'd like to help keep this show running with a flexible monthly donation, please visit patreon.com/lowprofile. Got a Venmo now too, that's at Lowpro Podcast. Low Profile receives in-kind support thanks to these Olympia, Washington independent businesses: Schwartz's Deli, Rainy Day Records, San Francisco Street Bakery, Old School Pizzeria, and Schurler Premium Shitty American Lager from Three Magnets Brewing. Come with me now to Alejandra and Aeron's backyard garden, where we will meet them and their daughter Agnes for the first time over coffee. This is Markley, and I'm here in Portland, Oregon, at the home of Alejandra Salinas and Aeron Bergman, and also we're joined by Agnes Bergman Salinas.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
It's a real pleasure and honor to be sitting with you all. I've been invested in your work for half of my life, I guess. I'm really excited to hear about how it all came to be because it's always been very mysterious to me. So, well, you started making music in the, I want to say, mid-90s.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
96.
Yeah. Together in '96 in New York City. We were living in Toronto in '96 actually.
Yeah, we met.
So we started in
Yeah.
Toronto together,
Yeah.
but it was totally informal and just
Right.
experimenting. So yeah.
It was not until we moved to New York that then we started to record and publish and meet other people. In Toronto, we were just doing it at home.
The project was then known as Alejandra and Underwood. Is that
Well, yeah, that's so we started to collaborate with a friend in New York,
Mhm.
and we came up with this name Sweatsuit Underwood. I mean it seems so abstract to even talk about this now. It's been so long, but
Right.
It was totally made up,
It was
and it was
completely made up.
His name is Daniel Raffle, and he came up with Sweetsuit, and then you took Underwood from the typewriter, I think.
yeah, it
But it
doesn't
was completely like 20-year-olds like coming up with a
coming up with some stupid name, and then it's like haunts us for the rest of our life.
Underwood.
Yeah, that's what Papa was making song with Daniel. You remember Daniel? We're
Mhm.
still friends.
Oh, good.
So and then I always kept my name Alejandra. So
Yeah. So your decision in the beginning was a good one in that you don't monkey around with your name. You just use your name. So
Yeah. And so how did you two come together and artistically and otherwise?
well, we met in Toronto. We were both studying in Toronto, and were introduced to each other and talked about Almodovar, the Spanish filmmaker, and I was in love pretty quickly. I don't know about you, but anyway, within 6 months or something, we were a couple. And then, I mean, we were students, so nothing serious, but we were making art and sound and films. And it came time to move because I graduated and she wanted to continue studying, and so we decided New York City. We moved there and started to do a lot of sound and started to take it a bit more seriously. And the nice thing about sound is that it's logical to collaborate. So as we were both coming up with ideas, at first we were just helping each other with each other's projects, and then as we got to really appreciate and enjoy each other's ideas, we decided to just collaborate. And so basically from 1998, 99 or so until now, we've collaborated on everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Wow.
Yeah, at the beginning we were working, as we were saying, with Daniel, and we were running the label and publishing other people's works, and then we started to work, Aeron and I, more and more closer together, and then that became slowly our focus, our collaboration together.
Yeah. And we always collaborate with other people as well, so that's kind of with our artistic practice and our sound practice. We've done a lot of collaborations with other people, so it's just something that we find personally fulfilling, and it does a lot of things, like it dismisses the kind of myth of genius that we have a problem with in art, and it's also a kind of community building activity. So when you collaborate with other people, you're bringing ideas, and it's kind of clear that it's a process that is about like the social aspect of art and art making and music, and that for us has always been very important. But then fundamentally, working together, we have this built-in collaboration, and we've been doing it now for a very long time. We're not famous, but we're starting to be among the collaborators who are that at least have the most longevity.
Yeah. You have some sway.
Yeah.
in this world. Yeah. So the label Lucky Kitchen, is there a big dramatic story behind that?
The name.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit nicer, I think.
Yeah.
It was our favorite restaurant in New York. We will go, I think it was the combination of two restaurant names, right? That we will go to, I believe.
The details are really fuzzy, but they're definitely at least one and maybe two restaurants.
I think it was a hybrid of two of our favorite restaurants that we will go to. But I think it was this idea of hybrid name. Yeah, Agnes likes hybrids.
Nice.
But in cooking and sharing meals, and this we were trying to bring these ideas of collaboration and mixing and gathering around a meal kind of ideas.
Am I wrong that I think I've heard a lot of sounds of cooking and the kitchen in your works?
Yeah, there's...
I'm wrong?
No, it definitely, there's a lot of sounds of meals and eating and cooking, for sure. That's a theme that's been consistent with all of our work, actually.
And as a matter of fact, we are now working on an audio documentary that is dealing with seeds, the patenting of seeds. So it's kind of interesting that we have kind of continued this in different manifestations to today, of like where, I mean in this case like where our food comes from, but different issues related to food.
I wanna watch a movie.
Oh, of course. Nice. Can you tell me about this record a little bit? It's the I'm pulling it out so all the listeners on the radio can see it. This is Alejandra and Salinas home tapes, Lucky Kitchen number 7, and you can hear it's packaged in very delicate materials.
Yes, so I made the vinyl from cassette tapes that I had from recordings I made growing up, and I remember when I was maybe like a little bit older than Agnes, I will just record all the sounds around me, and I will describe what was happening to the tape recorder, but also I will take it especially around celebrations or festivals So I had all of these sounds. And it's a thing with my family because my family emigrated to Canada and they will send tapes back and forth to each other from Spain to Canada. So somehow growing up, that's what we will do to communicate by recording tapes. And then I will make recordings when my parents were away, and then I will play back to them what I was doing during the day. So that seemed at the time kind of meaningful that I will have been doing this for so long, and this idea of keeping an archive of your life through cassette tapes. So I edited them and then made it into two sides, one that is a straightforward field recordings, and then the other one that is some kind of interpretation, reworking of the field recordings.
¿En qué película te enrollo?
That we were doing, both of us a lot at the time, is like trying to find a balance between having the audio documentary and not losing some of the essence or the spirit of it or the narrative, but then also to test what can you do with these sounds and what kind of compositions, or how can you still get the same sense without having such a clear reading of what it is.
So far you've mentioned living in London and Toronto and New York. Now you're here. You guys don't like to stay put. Is that fair?
I guess, I mean, life circumstances happen, and yeah, it's a long story. It's hard to summarize, but maybe that you're accurate that we don't like to stay put. Yeah.
Do you feel like the locations you chose were a big part of the artistic output you made at that time? It seems like a lot of location-specific recordings.
Yeah, well, I think that's an interesting question. Does the location make a difference? And of course it does, because we're surrounded by people and by different kinds of experiences of the different people in each place. And so we're picking up on and learning from the people around us. So absolutely our work, and it's whether it's sound work or artwork or writing or anything that we've been pursuing, our work changes a lot based on where we're living. It used to be somehow more important to name where we were making things, so that's why, for example, there's the La Rioja record and the Porto record.
Right.
One thing I can remember now is there's this barber and cutting hair in this some kind of old style. I don't even know. We didn't research.
Two scissors, right?
With two scissors, and all the locals would just stop in. It's a regular barber. There's something really beautiful about just how you could tell that this kind of haircut had been going on for a very long time. You could tell that this barber was a fixture in the community. And I think his name was Ferreira.
Right. It's in the credit.
Yeah. It's sorry the time now is so long we don't remember many details, but and so there was this the place is a special place in the community and also a special place in time. And so being there, just trying to like awkwardly, because everyone, they were very aware that there was two strangers recording them, so it's awkward.
Right.
But they were just like doing their best to ignore us. They're also like kind of polite, and since we were kind of harmless, we weren't asking them to do anything. They soon kind of forgot about us.
The fact that it was only sound helped too.
Right. It's different with a camera crew.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Watching your hair and everything.
Yeah.
So we told them that we were the sound that happens while during these haircuts was so special and wonderful that we just wanted to focus on and record that sound. And then I think they also realized, oh yeah, it is kind of nice. And so there was this moment where we were listening to them and then they were listening to themselves for the first time maybe in a long time, because of course when you do this every day you don't notice, but I think they noticed again. And so there was this really nice moment where this old and new coming together, and then the sort of awareness that happens when there's somebody else pointing it out. And so this moment was really, really special, and then it's also really nice that we have the recording. We don't listen to it that often, but when we do, sound and memory are so connected that it's like we were, 20-something again, standing in Porto a long time ago.
I think also the relationships we made when we were making the recordings, that was very special. Every recording has its story for sure. Cause,
Yeah.
like from when we went to Aforada to when all the boats were honking.
Yeah, with the boats, for example, in Aforada, that's this fishing village where the boats would go out every morning to the sea and catch fish and come back. And to have that right in the city is a little unusual. And so it was very traditional, but also the boats were kind of modern. They weren't just like rickety wooden boats. There were some, but actually there were some somewhat large modern ships in this fishing fleet. And so the tradition in Aforada and the Day of the Saint was they pulled out the saint and marched the saint around, and there's some songs and some rituals, but then they end up, of course, they bring the saint down to the boats. They bring the saint down to the harbor, because that's the livelihood of the town. In order to sort of bring the boats right into the ritual, all the boats blast their horn. These are modern boats. They're not like just old fishing boats. And so there's this blast, brrr, and all of them are blasting at a different pitch.
When we say tradition, there are these ideas of time being frozen at a certain time, and then like anything pre this period or this event is traditional, and everything afterwards is contaminated with modern influences.
Yeah. Contemporary.
Right. But that makes no sense, right? Because every culture changes through time, and traditions evolve, and at what point can you say that is really authentic? Is it like what time period are you going to say that the tradition can be stamped as authentic? So the boats that are using contemporary technology, they will be part of the lineage of tradition of blasting the horn during this day. It doesn't. The sound changes, but the tradition stays the same. So for us, it was about not romanticizing what old is or what tradition is, but seeing tradition alive through its rituals that are changing with life, and not exoticizing
Exoticizing.
the place. So, like, for example, there were these recordings of lavaderas where they will wash the clothes in this communal washing.
And singing too, right?
And singing.
I was listening to that this morning.
Yeah,
And
it's
that-
really beautiful.
It's really powerful
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
And I think on one hand, I was really amazed of this communal activity that women will go and wash their clothes there. But I think that for us it was important to not otherize them, to say like, oh, you know, like they don't have washing technology or whatever, because most likely they do have a washing machine at home.
So the
They
story,
just choose to.
the story with that is that the women who wash their clothes in the communal lavaderos, they have washing machines at home, but they actually lobbied the city to make a modern version of the old washing area,
Oh yeah, and it was super clean.
like clean and it was
shiny.
like Euro modern.
Uh-huh.
It's like glass windows, the
Really
beautiful
beautiful,
like
yeah.
stainless steel, like high design. So it's like a high design version of this ancient, you know, washing area for the village to go and wash their clothes. And then they weren't keeping it up because everyone has washing machines at home, like electric regular, you know, washing machines. They don't really need to go to the lavadoros. And so, but they missed it so much as a social community event where they would all see each other every day, or at least several times a week, that they lobbied to get a new one built of like high standards with actually a better view next to the harbor.
But also in practicality, though, I think it makes some sense, because some things you want to wash by hand, and washing things by hand in the sink is kind of annoying because you get water
Sure.
everywhere. So I think that also practically, like if there was a place in Alameda to go wash your clothes and I would chat with people, I would go too.
Uh-huh.
So I think for us it was important to not see a distinction between old and new, or between tradition and contemporary behavior, but to see them in context of their
Continuing traditions.
yeah.
Canta, canta, amigo, canta, vem cantar a tua canção. Tu sozinho não és nada, junto temos o mundo na mão. Que canta o seu mal espanta, e chora o seu mal aumenta. Eu canto com saudade, vai de uma dor que me atormenta. Canta, canta, amigo, canta, vem cantar a nossa canção. Tu sozinho não és nada, nós todos temos o mundo na mão. Se tu és o meu amigo, andamos para quem tu és, aceita comigo, para a terra pisar os pés. Canta, canta, amigo, para cantar a nossa canção. Tu sozinho não
You're not actively recording artists anymore.
Yeah, so that, I mean, we were prepared to answer that because although it seems like we haven't been publishing records, but we have like transitioned in a way that is logical to us to different kinds of projects, and we have not. There hasn't been like even a several month period where we haven't been productive. but we've moved from like sound art, audio, experimental audio, to like other forms of art production, and it often includes sound.
Sure.
And so we've done videos, performances, installations, and documentary works that involve sound, and we've composed music in different ways. But since then, we've done a number of other audio works. We worked with a choir, for example, here in Portland, and we composed a kind of improvised piece with them and recorded that, and that was part of an exhibition in Aarhus, the Kunsthalle Aarhus.
Other labels have released some of your work as well. Notably, the album that I never had any problem finding was Busha Blue Blazes. For whatever reason, that one, I would see it and I would buy it, and because I already had one and I would give it to somebody.
Oh, really?
That's sweet.
Appreciate it.
I love you.
Actually, I kind of want to stop there because there's this other story of like kind of the destiny that's led to this. Was when I, about 10 years ago, was renting a room from somebody, and the previous tenant had worked for, I believe, secretly Canadian distribution, and left a box of like 50 or more Lucky Kitchen releases in the garage there.
Yeah.
And I was helping my, the landlord essentially, clean out his garage, and I came across this. I'm like, where the hell did these come from? And he's like, I don't know, what is that? And I'm like, I know what this is. And I sent you an email.
I remember that email.
I remember.
And you told me just do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
Right.
What have
Yeah,
you?
you said, what shall I do with it? And they say, well, you can keep it or give it away.
Whatever, because we have boxes of CDs
We
as
still
well.
do, yeah.
So I mean, it's these objects, you know, the artifacts are somehow interesting and important in that they contain the material, but because for us it's just been about continuing to work and make more, that the individual things that are left behind are somehow less valuable to us personally, and certainly, as you can see from the discarded box, not particularly valuable socially either. So
Yeah.
so what did you do with the box of discarded Lucky Kitchen CDs?
Well, I kept copies of all the ones that I didn't have anymore, and I spent over the next couple years, I would just give them to people who I thought would appreciate
Oh,
them.
That's
nice.
nice. That's
Yeah.
really
That's
nice.
exactly what we
Yeah,
would
that's-
hope.
Yeah.
yeah.
I just shared them.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to Busha Blue Blazes. That album has a protagonist.
Uh-huh.
Who is Busha?
Aeron's grandma.
My grandmother.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Aeron grew up with his grandma, so they're very close. She's still alive. She's 90, over 90.
93.
Wow.
She'll be 94. Oh, very soon.
Yeah.
And when we were living in Spain in La Rioja, she came to visit and spent a month with us, and we decided that we would make a record together. And so every day I would just strum the guitar with some chords, and she would play along, and then Alejandra would play some electronics, and we would just kind of jam, improvise every day.
Wow.
And we recorded a number of hours, and then edited down and produced this record of my grandmother and Alejandra and I
Mm-hmm.
playing music together in La Rioja, in Logroño, La Rioja, Spain, in
Maybe
2000, I think, or 2001.
2001, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
That's when we were in
I
Spain.
thought maybe they were old like family tapes that you had
No,
found, but so that source material is all just
yeah.
a family band.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He likes playing guitar. I like playing more electronics.
Yeah,
And
what about that? What actually, when you say you were playing electronics during that, in that setting, what does that look like?
different things, like from things that I had, sounds that I had worked on, and then I would play back and then manipulate live, to not electronics, where I will take different objects and make sounds with it going along. So the whole idea was
Synthesizer,
yeah.
like some tones and some harmonies.
It's a small sounds that we could, that was kind of like, without speaking, that kind of became the premise that everyone would use a small, she would do a little humming or little words, and Aeron will just string gently, and I will use very gentle, small electronics or clinging sounds, and that's how it kind of developed.
Okay.
So going back to the family audio, because I think what you said was interesting, and I'll just elaborate that we have this interest or desire or like this kind of urgency to work with ready-made or found sounds, so sounds that we are finding, and sort of use those to like work with them to like bring out some of the social or formal issues that they have to like produce a new work. But also we're kind of generating found sounds in a way, so like we are kind of setting up situations for ourselves that then can be used as a kind of source material. So as we were jamming or like playing together as a family, we knew that we weren't sort of any of us prepared to make a complete work at the moment. So like it was always like very tentative what we were recording, because she's trained to sing in a very certain way. And I'm not a good guitar player, honestly, and she does electronics, but not in a sort of I
never quite improvise with other people like that.
What we are doing is not virtuosic.
No.
And so therefore it was about making situations and like coming up with a kind of library of sounds that we could then draw from later, because where we are the most talented in is editing. And so this is where we know how to edit, but we edit well. When you edit something, you're actually making a new construction and a new composition. That's where we...
how you put things together, you make connections between them.
Yeah.
That's what this is going to be.
Right.
And I'm sort of editing in my head I'm wondering what you're going to cut, and I'm like there's
I'm doing it too.
So that's the funny part of like an editor brain is you have the raw material to deal with, and hopefully there's enough good stuff in the raw material, and then you hope to be able to cut it in a way that makes sense.
But I think the most important thing about those recordings were the silence, because it was very much about the atmosphere, because we were recording in my mom's house, and then you will have like the dog in the background and my mom cooking, and then you will have the like rain, so then it became
the creaking of the chair.
Right. So then it became about not so much what we were doing, as he was saying. It was not about we're making music and we're a band, but it was about being together and spending time together. And then these recordings will go for a long, long time, and it will be about the feeling and about the environment that is created when bodies are together in a space, more than the specific sounds we were making.
My wife has described your music as something that it sounds like music that ghosts would make.
Yeah.
When we were making sound, we realized that how we were working is very particular and like very unbombastic and very like purposefully not something else.
Yeah.
And so like I remember like one of the main criticisms when we were starting to get press, one of the main criticisms was, oh, it's a failed laptop project, or oh, it's a failed like formalist.
Or IDM when it was
It's a
IDM,
failed
it
IDM
was-
project, or a failed. It's always a failed something else.
Because it was
Which
not
for us was
what's
actually
supposed to
very
be.
very successful. So
Right.
by not following a value system, or not following a sort of norm from another genre, from another way of working, this was purposely what we were doing.
Right.
We were very clearly not doing other things, and so but we all, I mean, the ghost thing, I think that your wife mentioned, that sounds pretty good. So we never had a sort of way of describing what we were doing, but we knew when it was right. Pulling ourselves into the sounds, because we're also, getting lost in doing it, and that kind of feeling is great. When you get lost in the thing that you're making, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So we were hoping also that the listener would get lost with us in this world that we're making, with these particular
and then
choices.
If we could find people who worked not necessarily the same as us, but that they were also not trying to follow a formula or a trend, but to do things that they seemed like they were failing, but they were actually not failing. They were just doing it in another way.
So there's a number of people in New York City. Of course, it's New York City. So there's a number of people who we could relate to and share interests with in New York City, and also in London. But in Spain, not so many.
Sure.
And so in any other town, not so many. But what we found was every city had a number of people. And so we were reaching out and connecting like early on in the internet. Thank goodness for the internet.
Yeah.
And so then we were finding like-minded people doing these off things, and meeting and collaborating and joining each other and publishing each other's works.
And I will say that what was exciting to us about sound, which we didn't get from visual art at the time, is that they were spread throughout the world, as Aeron was saying, people who were very committed, very dedicated, but because it was early internet and you really had to learn to know each other, but just by slow email, we will send letters to each other, we will send packages wrapped with a lot of love. So it really felt like you were getting a family, a community, little by little, and through time, and getting respect through time. And it didn't feel competitive, because A, there was no money to be made, and B, there were so few of us that we really were taking care of one another and helping one another. So that was very special, and that made us stay for many years in experimental sound.
Yeah.
Did you all do concerts? Like,
Oh yeah.
like, hey, we're a band, and this is our set list.
We would
and-
do tours for
So we would
sure.
do tours. I mean, we didn't have. I mean, it was always a bit of a kind of marketing problem, because we were never a band. But then the infrastructure, of course, for touring music were bands.
Yeah.
So then we would get invited. There's a number of years. I mean, we made a living on sound for 10 years. We had no other jobs.
Yeah.
We
were,
lived cheaply, but yeah.
we were broke as rats, but we actually got paid to do performances.
won an award way back, that was like almost 20 years ago, for Scotch Monsters and The Tale of Pip, which is the latter is like kind of the most straightforward narrative type project that you've done. Do you still have this award?
The PR's Electronica Award.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think
is
we
that like a
kept the
physical
statue itself.
They
there
gave us some kind of statue
trophy.
that we don't have, but we were very happy with the money.
Oh, cool.
For us, that was like an entire year of living, basically.
That was
That's how
life-saving.
broke we were.
Yeah, that was life-saving. And then another funny thing that happened with that is that we had to perform as part of the award.
Yeah. Should I tell that one?
Sure, you can do that.
Please.
So we were invited to Linz, Austria, to perform and to like accept the award and this whole business. And they had like this sort of TV show set for the award, and it's kind of serious. I mean, for Austria, it's one of the biggest sort of prizes that they hand out. And it's televised and everything. But we didn't realize is that there's like an experimental acoustic like academic venue, and for some reason they put us in the pop music venue, and with some like Austrian rappers that had won an award that year.
Oh, wow.
And so they said, there's your stage and there's the barriers. And so they had these giant like
a cage.
Like a cage. They had us in a cage.
Oh, wow.
And so we said, why did you have the cage? Why are we in the cage? And they said, so the audience won't throw themselves at you. And we said, the audience is not going to throw themselves at anything at all. If anything, we're going to put them to sleep. And so it was just so absurd. And sure, I mean, it was a total failure, of course, because the audience went there expecting another like pop music phenomenon, and they got us, and they
But they mostly left.
They mostly left.
People will open the door, peek in, and it was so absurd to see us like playing these small sounds in this cage that people will peek in and be like, "What in the world is going on here?" And then they will leave. We could just hear the door opening and closing,
Opening and closing. And so I mean, we got some aggressive comments, and it's very easy to talk over our shows because we play quietly.
Yeah.
And we got some aggressive comments, and then we got a stream of people out the door, and then we got people coming and listening for a second and leaving, and that was our PR's Electronica experience.
But to why we stopped releasing and performing, it just got a little intense to have this, at that point, maybe bi-monthly trips, and kind of feel like you're putting yourself out there and you don't know what is going to happen.
It's
Felt
exhausting.
too out of control, so we wanted to have a more autonomy of our production and our the perception of the reception of the work, I guess. But also philosophically, I think it was bothering both of us that we were going to towns, but we couldn't remember what town we were in or where anything happened, because it was all a big blur of traveling, taking the train, flying, wherever. I just couldn't remember what happened anywhere. Then we started making sure that we will stay in each place for a long time.
We would insist that whenever we would get an invitation that we stay wherever it was for a month. So we stayed a month in Taiwan, a month in Japan.
That's the way to do
We
it.
stayed a month in Australia. We stayed a month in Berlin.
And even now that we're doing more art center kind of things, we do more residencies, or even if we're installing a show that could be installed in 3 days, we stay a week or two.
You guys are very, very world-wise people. I don't have a whole lot of context about your more recent works, but it definitely seems maybe a bit bleaker. You've remastered a lot of your recordings that we've been talking about, as well as some that had been unreleased, and they all have like kind of a uniform style of new cover art, whereas before it was kind of a soft, very soft looking artwork.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting description, bleak.
Maybe we moved more from the personal and the biographical to the structural.
Mm.
So I think as we started to understand the world more, getting older and reading more and thinking more, then we started to see that the things that we and everyone suffer from like trauma to growing in struggles, economic and otherwise. You got the B again.
Put it by the microphone so everyone can hear it.
Oh, just slowly take the headphones off, and then don't move, and they'll realize that she'll realize that there's nothing there.
Oh, it got me.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Hit me.
Oh no!
Is it gonna die?
She will, but it's okay. We only
Okay.
live a week anyway. We'll get you a nice
Yeah,
pack.
I don't know. Should I swat it or?
Just get it out now, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Let's get you a nice pack
That's
and
a
a
new
hat.
one.
Oh dear. Yes, he's trying to.
It's okay. I'm gonna see if I can put the headphones over the ice pack.
Oh my God. Those bees.
Sorry about your bee.
So talking
It's okay.
about bleak, we have the a bee attack, and the poor thing is now on her last seconds of life. I would say that our feeling about the work is not bleak.
Mm.
The world is pretty bleak itself. I mean, but also beautiful and wonderful. So we're trying to, that's also why we make art. Because there's so much to celebrate. And there's so much beauty and wonder and science and, our daughter and the bees. And so but for us it's about like acknowledging that it's kind of a complete package.
Mm.
For us, it's been really important to acknowledge that art is propaganda, despite the wailing of the purists. And so there's this idea going around that there's some kind of pure art, and art with no context and content. And of course, we understand that kind of art, and that kind of art and entertainment especially, comes from a fundamentally well-adjusted place that basically is propaganda for the status quo. Instead, we're making a kind of very purposeful, and I would say loving, ultimately, dissent.
Because then we don't feel like it's our personal failings or like it's our problem alone, but we feel connected with other people, and we feel like if something is not working, it's not because you as a person are inadequate, but it's because this is stacked up against you because of this reason, and then there might be ways in which collectively these things could be combated or reimagined. So it has made us much more at peace with ourselves through not shining away from problems, but trying to understand them. And that's what we try to teach our students. Like sometimes they say, oh, this is so heavy, but then we tell them, well, if you acknowledge the problem and you acknowledge that other people are suffering from the same things that you are suffering, and that there are things that can be done, then you would feel much more able to cope with what you're coping with. And even with our daughter in her, for her age, we try to explain to her how things work instead of trying to like make some kind of imaginary worlds for her.
A fairy tale. I mean,
Right.
we found it like actually offensive. The more like as we grew up, the more we understood all the fairy tales that we've been taught. The more we just got more disgusted by, like, first of all, why racism, inequality, and other shit happens, and then why is there such a machine to cover all that up?
Speaking of
We might
such a machine,
pause the machine blasting by.
But
Oh,
you see, yeah, they're going to the next road, to the ahead of the road, right?
Yes, those machines that just tore up the road that last week.
I had a feeling if I got together with you two that there would be a lot of interesting ambient sounds.
You were right.
Well, I'd like to thank you both so much.
Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for having me over. This has been really enlightening and just very nice. And I still haven't eaten one of these delicious cookies that you've baked, so I'm looking forward to that.
How's your head?
I think I just need a cookie and it'll be all better.
Okay. Sounds good.
This has been an interview with Alejandra Salinas and Aeron Bergman on Low Profile with me, Mark Lee Morrison. You can find links to Alejandra and Aeron's work, past and present, and most of the recordings that you heard on this episode's website at lowprofilepodcast.com. Special thanks to Nathan Burko Gibson. He painted the portrait for this episode. You can follow or subscribe to this show wherever you get podcasts. And if you want to keep up with future developments, there's a Facebook group. It's called Low Profile Listener Hub. I'm also on Instagram and Venmo at Low Pro Podcast. And the raw version of this interview will be available for folks who support this show on patreon.com/lowprofilepodcast. Thanks for listening and see you next time.